Well, the way we use listening is not actually linked to the hearing. Listening is just abiding to the fact. Like a child, you put a 2-year-old child in a room and he's listening to the sound, but to what he sees, to the smell, and to the cold, and to the... So listening is not something we do, listening is what we are. When you go out in the street, if it's cold or warm, you make an effort to close your jacket, to remove your jacket. Listening is a very core of life, so it doesn't need anything. But it is true that we are so much cut generally from that listening because we are caught in thinking, and like when you see people walking in the street, you can see that nobody is looking, nobody is listening, people are thinking. I don't mean even the new decadent one who are looking at the phone, but even before the absurd creation of the phone, people in the street, you could see some they walk, they laugh, some they walk, they cry, some they walk, they sing. They're not present.
Welcome back to the Sounds of Sand podcast. My name is Michael Riley, and today I'm in conversation with Éric Baret. Without diploma or culture, Éric Baret has no special competence. Touched by the non-dual tradition through Jean Klein's teaching, he suggests that one turn towards listening, free of any notion of gain, nothing taught, no teacher, meeting for the joy of being nothing. And today is a fascinating conversation where we talk about his early days and connection with Jean Klein, his thoughts on gurus and teachers and the path of Kashmir Shaivism, and his book, Let the Moon Be Free, Conversations on Kashmiri Tantra, which was translated by Science and Nonduality's own Jean-Ric Meller, and you can find links to that in the show notes to discover more about Éric and his fascinating path and philosophy. All today on the Sounds of Sand podcast presented by Science and Nonduality.
Welcome to Science and Nonduality. What is non-duality?
The universal forces.
It's the collective consciousness.
Being aware.
Trauma is not the external event that happens. Trauma is the impact of that event, which is the disconnection from ourselves.
That matter is energy, energy is matter. That's what EMC squared is about.
There's a language without nouns. There is a language without subjugation. There's a language without objectifying.
But if it's recorded, then there is a collapse. But if it's not, then it's the infinite potentiality.
Okay, I'm here with Éric Baret for the Sounds of Sand podcast. Thank you for connecting with Sand once again, Éric.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So we have a lot of articles and videos of your dialogues and writings on the website. So there's a lot of ways people can connect with what you've offered at Sand and elsewhere over the years. So as a way to begin and to orient perhaps listeners who aren't as familiar with your work, would you mind tracing your lineage and evolution along the spiritual path for us?
Oh, actually, it'll be very fast because there's no lineage and no spiritual path. I just had the chance to meet an exceptional man called Jean Klein, and I would say that's it. Nothing else had any importance in my life but for that meeting. And I had the chance to listen to him without understanding it, of course, for 30 years. But even if you don't understand somebody on that level, you're due to be touched despite your own limitation. And so living with this light was my life up to now. I met him, I was 16, and now I'm more or less dying at 70 something. Yeah. So there's nothing else in my life but that. Mm-hmm. The rest is of very little importance. Don't think you will even accept the idea of lineage. Mm-hmm. For him, the tradition is without anything personal. So what he gave us came from his teacher, and it came from the teacher of the teacher. So there's no personal entity in line. Actually, teaching is there, and the rest is really kind of romanticism. At least he was conveying this resonance with us, and that's what we try to do.
And was your initial meeting with Jean Klein, was it like a bolt of lightning, like you said, okay, this is it, or was it more gradual?
No, I was too superficial to be able to feel something like that. No, I met him, and I'm not going to tell my story, it's really relevant, but I met him when I was 16. I was in a meeting in Nice, in France, south of France. I really didn't like what I was seeing, because at the time I was very anarchist, and I met this man who looked like very rich, very elegant, very well dressed, everything I could not stand, very educated. And I asked 2 questions. He put me down very rightly about the 2 questions. But at the end of the meeting, he was unknown at that period. We were maybe 10, 12 in the room. He said, forget everything we said. If it is of any concern for you, when you will cross the street in some time, he will come back to you. And so I left really unimpressed. I spent a week sleeping on the beach in Nice, and literally crossing the street 1 week later, something came very, very strongly to me that I had to see this man again. And so it was the beginning of a long friendship.
If you remember, could you describe a bit what that realization crossing the street felt like, or what it was?
No, it was just that I must see that man again, and slowly, yeah. It was so important for me was that maybe a few months later he came to Marseille, where I was living. And at the time I was doing yoga with a very extraordinary woman, an old woman that had a very high, I would say, spiritual experience. Actually, it was this woman who had sort of, one way or another, introduced me to Jean. And so he gave the talks, and I slept the whole talks. First, I would not understand anything he would say, because it was a very strange way to present things, and I was totally unable to understand his semantic. But when the meeting stopped, I went to see her. I said, "What do you think?" And she told me, "This man is beyond time and space." And coming from her, that had an impact on me. And then slowly, something unraveled with him.
Beautiful. And then you developed a student-teacher relationship with him at that point?
It took time. During the same time in Marseille, the men who organized the meeting invited him. I was living with my parents. I was 16. And so we had lunch together, and he asked, this friend asked Jean, talking about me, he said, our friend want to go to India. Can you give him some advice? And so I was expecting some very spiritual advice. And he looked at me in a very cold way, and he said, work on your English. I really didn't like this advice. And then I look at this man, and for the first time in my life, I was totally afraid. I couldn't look at him. And up to that, my life, I was very much into physical action. And I used to drink a lot and to fight a lot in the street. And I had always the feeling that I could not respect any authority. And anybody I could frighten physically, I could not respect. I was not stupid enough to think that I was stronger than anybody else. But I was always told myself, even if a man is stronger than me, if I kill his daughter, if I rape his wife, if I burn his house, this man may break. And I could not respect somebody who could break. And when I look at Jean, for the first time, I had this, and of course I'm not saying it is right or not, but I had this very strong feeling that I could not break this man. Not physically, but I felt in him something I could not touch. Whatever I will do to him, I felt it was something not negotiable. And that the first time I abide in a certain way to authority, it was fear. I could not respect somebody which could create fear in him. And so he created fear in me. And so that was my experience of surrendering to him. That was sort of a psychopathic case, but it was felt like that.
Do you feel that that was a way to experience surrender, this idea of the integrity and strength of your teacher that as an unbreakable force that you needed to devote yourself to?
I really think it was my own pathology. For whatever reason, and I could not respect. I always had the feeling that when somebody was teaching, it was always fake.
Right.
I could not respect my parents. I could not respect the government. I could not respect spiritual teacher because I always feel when they say that, but they talk the talk, but you walk the walk. And Jean is the first person had this feeling that yes, he was really what he was saying. I would not understand, of course, anything what he was saying, but for me it was genuine. I had already that experience with my yoga teacher, was an exceptional woman, but with him it was beyond that. But it took time. With Jean, it took time to be closer to him and to become a student, and it took years actually. I was very young and very immature, and so it sort of began like that.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to ask about was the importance of the relationship, especially in Kashmir Shaivism, of the importance of the guru and what qualities one should look for when they're finding a guru or a teacher or a mentor, whatever terminology we want to use, but someone who's our guide, who we surrender to as the...
Well, actually, you cannot judge a guru because you have to be a guru yourself. So in certain way, you're always living in daydreaming when you try to understand if the guru is the right guru, the wrong guru, because we cannot judge. We cannot judge what is beyond our abilities. So, for me, Kashmir Shaivism is sort of foreign for me because I feel it is a religious teaching, which I have high respect for that, and I study it up to a certain point. But I think most people, cannot study that. It's too complex. But what is important is to become aware of our own problematic, our own defense and limits, and the teaching must go to the fact, not to the theory. So in Kashmir Shaivism, of course, as in all Indian tradition, guru is extremely important, but that's an Indian tradition. Like in India, if you study Sanskrit, if you study martial arts, if you study whatever, music, you have to, when you enter a room, you lie and then touch the feet of your guru. And it's India. Because in India, people realize that when you touch the feet of your guru, when you lie down in front of him, you don't actually lie down in front of the guru, you lie down in front of the truth, which the guru incarnate. Mm-hmm. So here, people will not understand that. So I think here, they don't need a guru, and they think they just need of resonance with some teaching, like with some music, you resonate with that, so that music some music touch you more than others, some teaching touch you more than others. You must be free of the fantasy of guru-ness. And actually, when Jean Klein was teaching in Europe, he was sort of formal in a way. And so in the public talks, everybody would call him sir or master or doctor. But when he went to California, the first time I remember he came back and we spent time together. And he said, Éric, in California, it's not enough to be a guru, you have to be a friend too. Other people will not understand. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, in France, nobody will ever touch Jean Klein physically. Mm-hmm. Or something around him. But in California, everybody will take his arm and go around him and walk together. And he plays the game very well. it was very strange for French people who went to see him in California, because we were not used to this kind of seemingly friendship and looseness. But for him, of course, it was the same. And I think, in Europe, we're about 30 years late from California, always. So now in Europe, it become like that. And I think it is nice because as much in India, when you study the guru in India, you don't pay anything. The teaching is always free. Mm-hmm. But of course, you clean the house of the guru, you bake for him, you cook for him. And when you leave the teaching, you offer 1 cow, 2 cows, maybe. But we're not in India. Mm-hmm. So I respect very much Indian tradition, which I've based for many years in it. But India is India, and we don't live in India. So I think here we must be very more simple and functional. And so if you meet somebody which you feel a kind of... I think for me the most important is that you feel that what the person say, he really feel it. I'm not saying he knows it, but at least he feel it. He has a preconception. It may not be totally realized because there's no guru like Jean Klein or Maharaj or on the market, genuine one, I mean. But at least the person must have this inner feeling and must live up to a certain point accordingly to this feeling. And of course, who are we to judge? That's always an interpretation. But I think for me the main thing is the resonance. You must like your teacher, not personally, but you must, if you don't like your teacher, you must find another one. Because it's kind of friendship which, and it's true of anything. If you learn tennis, if you learn boxing, you must like your teacher. Or if you learn Sanskrit, you must like your teacher. That doesn't mean you like his psychopathic level, but you must like something in him because we learn from mimetism. And so you must want to become like him, not in an outside way, not in a formal way, but there's something like that. So when you play tennis with a teacher, for a long time you're going to play like the teacher. Later on you find your own way to play. And when you study with a teacher, you're going to copy him, and that's not wrong because we learn by copying. Mm-hmm. And later on, when you assimilate the teaching, then of course you find your own way, which is more genuine for you. But at the beginning, you must accept that copying is the only way to learn. And it's not formal copying. It's not that one should try to be like Jean Klein. But that means you must have emulsion, you must have stimulation of the teaching. So I think this stimulation is for me the recognition of the... And I'm not saying guru, because guru in India is very specific, but let's say of somebody who may help you in your discovery. So the person you must feel that the person who teach you must have encountered more or less the same problematic, and needs find a way to live lightly with it. So you ask him, you had fear, and the teacher said yes, and he said no, and the teacher said no, I don't feel that. So you said, well, how do you do it? And so he's giving you his example, which work up to a certain point for you, because we're all the same, but we're all different. And so that's it. But I'm not resonating very much with the idea of finding a guru like we have in India. Mm-hmm. Because it's very Californian like gurus, and but I don't follow more or less this fashion.
Yeah, and I guess, thinking of this word guru as just a placeholder for the idea of someone that you develop a personal relationship with. I feel that a lot of people on the spiritual path these days are, because there's so much information online, there's so many videos we can watch and books we can read and articles and podcasts, etc. Do you feel it's almost essential that someone develops a face-to-face relationship with a teacher? Because it sounds to me like what you're speaking about with your relationship with Jean Klein is that it was indeed his words, the things he was saying, but also do you think it was the way he carried himself and the energy, used the word resonance?
Honestly, the teaching is in the life of the teacher. That means what he says is very, very secondary.
Yes.
I mean, all the teachers say the same thing. Everybody now in non-duality say the same thing. So who cares what somebody says? You can read Ramana Maharshi and you read Krishna Menon and you can, if you're not stupid, yes, it's very easy to answer like them. But that doesn't make you a teacher. Teacher means somebody who have accepted to see his limitation, who accepted to see his weakness, who accepted to see his jealousy, who accepted to see his own fear, and which have developed a way to encounter them in a functional way. And so you can convey this art of living peacefully, and which is the base of discovering what is essential. But for me, teachers do not transmit the essential. The essential is in yourself. Nobody can give it to you. That's why in India we give very often the example of the transmission of the teacher as two matches. One match is lighted and one is not. And one of the matches lighted come close to the other one, the light. But it's not a transmission. It is that the unlighted matches has a potential, but is not yet awakened. So it's not a transmission from one to the other. The lighted match doesn't give anything, but just its own light sort of reverberate in the student's light. And that was the main teaching of Jean Klein. When you will enter the room of Jean Klein, he will look at you and you will see the beauty in you. Not physically, not mentally. You will see immediately all our fault, all our problematic, all our stupidity, but you will see beyond that. So you will see what was essentially us, which was, of course, what was essentially is. This oneness actually was the teaching. Then, how it conveys some structural teaching was really secondary. He was teaching a kind of body work, so we did body work, but he will have taught music and singing, we will have taught music and singing. It was really secondary. So the formal teaching was a pretext, and Jean very often says that. He said, when we were meeting in seminar, he said, what we're going to do, what we're going to say is a pretext. Actually, what's happening is beyond the reach of the mind, so we are here for the joy of being together, and what we do, we don't care. What we talk, we don't care. What we think, we don't care. What we do care is just beingness, which is stimulated by being genuine in the moment, by not trying to achieve anything, by not trying to appropriate anything, by not trying even to understand anything. To remain in this aloofness of all conclusion, of all knowledge, of all certitude, was this coming together, what was actually the main teaching of Jean.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that history of your relationship with Jean Klein. And just to stay in the past for one more question. And so after those initial meetings and those initial years with him, did you see an evolutionary arc to your own practice, or was it more steady?
There was two moments important in my life with him. After 10 years, I had sort of understood the teaching, and then one day I realized I understood nothing. It was a very strong understanding. 20 years later, I had the feeling I understood the teaching, and then I realized I understood nothing. It was a very important moment. And then later on, I realized that there actually was nothing to understand, and so I gave up any fantasy of understanding his teaching, which I think actually is not possible. So it remained a flower flavor, it remains music, it remains presence, but no, actually, I feel as the same limitation as when I met him. I'm as stupid and I'm as arrogant and I'm as defensive, and I didn't see any change in me. The only thing I could say is that I don't care. Mm-hmm. I really don't care of my limitation. I really don't care being egotic. I really don't care having fear. I really don't care being jealous. I really don't. I don't care this emotional element. And when I met him, it was very important for me. It was. I hated myself being like that. I hated myself being like that. Oh, I was praising myself being like that. It's the same thing. If you hate something in you, that means you like something else. Now, I really don't care. I am like I am, and I give up any fantasy or having any opinion on myself and on anybody else. I will say that will change, but nothing else has changed.
And so when you say I don't care, you're saying I don't care about the contents of my personality. Is that what you mean?
Yes, I mean I accept that I cannot be different than what I am. Mm-hmm. So when an emotion comes, when something comes, I stop having the fantasy, or no, it's good or not good. I should be different, and I should not. No, I should nothing. I should not nothing. You know what is there cannot be anything else than the ultimate. I may be able to see it or not. That's my problem. But I stop pretending knowing what it is. I stop pretending understanding what's happening, because we can't. When I said I understand something, I limit the immensity to my own stupidity. It's not an understanding, it's just a concept. Mm-hmm. So you give up, in a way, any dynamic of conclusion, of understanding, and you become stupid. I mean, there's nothing I know, there's nothing we can know, there's nothing I need to know, and I need to know, maybe you're going to tell me in a moment. You know, that's very simple. So the mechanism of understanding, I think, for me, the ultimate problematic of the human mind, because there's nothing to understand. Beauty cannot be understood, love cannot be understood, and oneness cannot be understood, and what can be understood? When I said I understand something, I just mean I put a concept on it. I thought, now I understand. I understand nothing, I just put a name on it. So if I'm Buddhist, I put Buddhist name. If I'm Hindu, I put Hindu name. If I'm Shiva, I put Shiva name. I can put a Christian name, I can put a fascist name, I can put a capitalist name. I put a name. Mm-hmm. I don't understand. So this was really the core of the teaching, actually.
Mm-hmm. And do you feel like, do you feel as though you're in that space for most of your day? So you're in the space of...
No, I feel the opposite. I feel I'm 99% in limitation, in judgment, and that's okay, because I don't have any other way. I need to be different. I accept that I accept it. Why? Because I have no choice. You know, when you're young, you think, oh, I'm going to transform myself, I'm yoga, I'm going to eat like that, I'm not going to do that, I'm going to do that, I'm going to read Tantra Loka, I'm going to study, I'm going to do this. And it's very sweet. But, you know, it's like a child wearing a Zorro mask and, thinking he's Zorro. Then you come at some point in life, life is short. We're going to die today, tomorrow. There's no time to become anything. There's no time to appropriate anything. There's no time to understand anything. But there is time to totally give oneself to the moment. Mm-hmm. All the rest, for me, the fantasy. Mm-hmm. And the moment doesn't need any comment about I should be, I should not be. It's a kind of childish game to think. There's nothing to think in life. Life has nothing to do with thinking. But we spend all our day in thinking this, I should do that, I should not do that. Thinking is a curse. It's a beautiful curse. There is a role to play, but thinking that I should find what I look for in thinking is really deluded vision.
Yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful perspective you're offering, although it's very essential and simple, and I think a lot of people can identify with this. But I do, like, most people are also stuck in thoughts. They're stuck in the judgments and the things that you said you spend 99% of your time in. But still, don't you feel that there is a perspective that you're able to say, okay, I'm in that? Like there's a identification with an awareness, a witness that's able to recognize these things as not the primary self.
When you see you're stuck, you're not stuck.
Right, but most people don't see that.
You cannot not be stuck, because to think that is being stuck. Mm-hmm. Put it in a different way. You cannot be humble. To say humble or to think I'm humble is arrogance. But the moment I see my arrogance, it is humility. But there is no room for anybody to be humble. The moment I will think I'm humble, that's arrogance.
Right.
No, it's a negative path, not in a psychological way, but in a way that I can never appropriate any positivity. So to see what I'm not is a revelation of what I am, but I cannot be what I am, because then it will be a subject-object relationship. So to see my arrogance is humility, but it's not good to be humble, otherwise it will be arrogance. So it's important to see that there is no room for appropriation. There's no room to become humble, like the Christian people who try to be more and more humble. It's just arrogance. Or people who want to be spiritual or realize or pure. It's very sweet. And for me, it's like somebody who wants to become Zorro because he wears a mask of Zorro.
And when you use the word appropriation there, are you saying like to imitate what we think is someone else's behavior?
In the sense, maybe it's a bad word in English, I'm sorry.
No.
I mean in a way of making something out of it. To appropriate is like a child, he wears the mask of Zorro and he thinks he's Zorro. So he just identified with so there's nothing to appropriate, and there's nothing wrong there to appropriate because we have no choice. But the moment I see my appropriation, the moment I see I react as Éric, there's something free of the fact. But I cannot not react as Éric. If I said I don't want to react, then it's a fantasy. So you can only see what is wrong, but not wrong in a metaphysical way, not wrong in a moral way. So you can only see what you're not. But what we are is not something we can experience in subject-object relationship. So we cannot know it, we cannot feel it, we cannot think it, we cannot experience it, because that's what we are. Everything we think, feel, experience is not what we are. We are it too, of course, but in a certain way, for a long time, it distracts us from the core of what is essential, which is the silence between two thoughts and two perceptions, the deep sleep, in a moment where there is no reference, when there is no me and the other, So this the ultimate simplicity, because there's nothing more simple than not to do anything. But we are constantly doing something. Jean Klein used to say, meditation is just not to take the train. So not to take the train, you have nothing to do. Mm-hmm. We are constantly taking the train mentally. We are constantly doing. And then one day you realize that what is important is not what you do, but what you are. But as long as you have this kind of inner fulfilling of that, you're constantly looking, what shall I do? What is better for me? Shall I do this? Shall I do that? Is it better to become Buddhist, to be a Shaiva, to be vegetarian, to be a Brahmacharya, to sleep with everybody? What is the best? Which is actually meaning what is the best for me. But as there is no me, as me is a fantasy, it is a ridiculous question. But I spend my life asking myself this question: what is the best for me? What shall I do? to realize it means nothing. It means nothing. It's not what I do what is important, it's what I am. So we're constantly forgetting that, and so when I don't have this feeling of what I am, I'm looking for myself in doing. So I become a Buddhist, I become Shiva, I do yoga, I become this, I listen to this great teacher with a long beard, and I go to India, and I do this, what I do is irrelevant. What I think is irrelevant, who I sleep with is irrelevant, what I eat is irrelevant. The only thing important is what I am. But I constantly deny this evidence in looking myself in what I do. That's a very important line to resonate with. The only question people ask is, what shall I do?
Right. It's the first question everyone asks you. What do you do?
Well, the last one, but there's no answer, because the question is, stop trying to do something. What you are is not the result of doing. Go back to yourself. What you do is a prolongation of yourself, but you never find yourself in what you do, in what you think, in what you feel, what you experience. You can take the best drugs, you can do the highest yoga, you can become an ascet, you can do... It is irrelevant, because every night in deep sleep, you give up all that to be nothing, and that's the core of life. Deep sleep is the approach of deep sleep is very important in our resonance.
The importance of deep sleep.
Yes, because you may have the best lover, after 2 days what you want, now you want to sleep. You may have an incredible car, after 2 days what you want to sleep. You may have a pile of gold, what you want, after 2 days you want to sleep. It's more important. The deep sleep is being nothing. And that ultimate ecstasy in the night, when you have the chance to sleep alone, and in the night you give yourself to nothingness, and you're really going deep in it. I mean, you go to sleep to die. Tomorrow, I don't know, maybe the Russian will have some atomic bomb, and there's no tomorrow. I don't care of tomorrow. Now, you go to sleep now, it's finished. I give up my wife, my child, my body, my past, my future, my fantasy. The beauty of sleep is giving up everything. And there's a moment of ecstasy of letting go. And then if one can do it intensely, sometime in the morning before the body wake up, before the mind wake up and create the world, sometimes there's a kind of knowing, but without knowing it. A bit like in a dream. Sometimes in a dream, you know there is somebody in the other room. You don't know you know it, but you know it. Mm-hmm. And then the same way, sometimes you may have in the morning that you know yourself before the body wake up, before the mind wake up. You don't know you know it. It's very difficult to convey it if you're not a poet. And then the body wake up and mind wake up. This fulfilling. But that's due to going to sleep, in the deep sleep, in a very intimate way, which is a big part of Jean's teaching, actually.
Something else about deep sleep, or sleep in general, what was coming to me when you were talking earlier was the idea of lucid dreaming. And, I think people practice lucid dreaming and they're interested in this as some sort of tool to better understand the self. But it's an interesting thing because it's like once you start lucid dreaming, you're almost stopping dreaming, stopping that automatic space of images and thoughts, that surrendering to the flow of the unconscious mind, creating these stories that we're in.
But dreaming and waking is the same. When you dream, if a crocodile eat your leg, it's the same experience that what you call the waking state. It's only after you said it was a dream, but during the dream it was a waking state. So for us, we never interfere with dream. On the contrary, because in a way in the dream you cannot fake anymore. Let's say you're afraid of black cat. Maybe you do yoga, whatever you do, and maybe in the daily life you come to a point that you're not afraid anymore of a black cat. But if in dreams you dream you're afraid of a black cat, I mean you're still afraid. On the contrary, you're afraid of a black cat, you do some therapy, whatever, you're still afraid of black cat in waking state. But in the dream, you see a black cat, you're not afraid. That means slowly, the waking state, you won't be afraid anymore. Because the dream is closer, because you cannot pretend in dream. Waking state, you can pretend to be a guru, you can pretend I'm not afraid of anything. But in dream state, your ability are different. So for us, dream state is closer to truth than waking state. So we never interfere with it. We listen to it without interpretation, with the feeling that you wake up from a dream, the kind of whole body is still vibrating with the dream, so we live with it. But we never try to have a dreaming state consciously. For us, it makes no sense. I respect it. It is in the Tibetan tradition, it is in some Indian tradition. So I have no problem, no quarrel with that, but we don't resonate with that. For us, dreaming must be like totally free of any artifice. And in France, of course, we have two words which we don't have in English. We have rêve and we have songe. Songe is a dream, but more subtle, but it's very difficult to convey the meaning. Mm-hmm. And this songe, the dream is personal. I mean, the dream, generally, you cannot rape your neighbor in daily life, so you rape her in dream, or you cannot kill the husband, so you do it in dream. So it's a prolongation of the waking state. But the songe in French, I think in Spanish they have another word too. Mm-hmm. It conveys, it doesn't come from you. It's a kind of revelation. And so the teaching, the moment you really engage, not psychologically, but from the heart, in a tradition, you're going to dream about it. And that's the sign. Like if you sleep with a woman or with a man, for a certain time, if you don't dream of your lover, that means the relation is not that deep. It's the same thing of everything. If you do martial art, if you don't dream about art of fighting, you're not really into it. When you're really into it, you dream about it. You can receive the teaching in dream. And in yoga and in what we discussed today, it is the same thing. So understanding in dream actually is more important than understanding in the waking state, because in waking state you can push it in a certain way. Like you take some ayahuasca, you take some drug, and yes, you understood, but 1 week later your wife sleep with a neighbor, and your understanding is very little. But in dream, the understanding comes generally first in dream, and then it will eventually unravel in waking state. So for a dream is very sacred. We don't touch the dreams.
Mm. Yeah, I had a teacher once who said, a dream practice teacher, he said dreams don't lie, basically, that everything that happens in the dream is true because it's present. And you were mentioning the energetic resonances of dreams in the body, and I think that's a lovely gateway to discuss the body, because science and non-duality often we're focused on concepts, especially in this podcast format, the conceptual mind, the theories and practices. But I was wondering if you could talk a bit about the body and the importance of the body. Well,
the first thing is to see that body and mind are just two words for the same thing. Mm. But for semantic, our language do not allow us another way. So sometimes we talk about the physical effect on the mind, sometimes we talk about the somatic effect on the body, but actually there's no effect from one to the other because there's only one. It's the two sides of the same coin. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about the concept, we said it is the mind. We talk about the percept, it is the body. But it's very superficial formulation, because actually a concept is a perception, because you feel the concept. And actually the perception is a concept. The moment you said it's a perception, it is a concept in the mind. So perception and concept are two words. We talk about the same thing in different way. And again, with our limited mind, we don't allow us, at least in the modern language, in Sanskrit, in Chinese, in Arabic, or Persian, maybe different. there are more subtle words, but in our very limited language semantic, we talk about physiological effect and somatic effect, and it means nothing. But what we can realize is that more the body sensitivity come alive, more the thinking reduce. That means when you make love with a new girlfriend, you don't think when you make love. You totally, after 3 months, maybe when you make love with her, you can think about something else. That means the love of reduce, the intensity of reduce. In moment of intensity, you don't think. That's why when somebody has a nervous breakdown, you slap the person in one moment, the person keep quiet. Because you cannot feel the slap and think at the same time. So in all, I think, tradition, there's always an emphasis in the physical element. Mm-hmm. And even in a very religious teaching, the monk of all the Christian church, they were spending 18 hours doing gardening or doing cheese or doing wine or working. The monk of the Chan tradition in China, they were working the whole day long. Then there was some teaching of Wang Po, Wenang, Chen Wei. It was non-dual teaching, but before and after they were in the field, cleaning. And so I think in all tradition, the physical element is very strong, because when you do, when you give yourself to doing, there's no doer, there's only doing. And so the mind at always a limited place in traditional teaching. Of course, when we record the teaching, now you read Wang Po and you said it's fantastic, but Wang Po's teaching was not what you read, it was what you read for people who work 18 hours in the field. Mm-hmm. So for 18 hours, they were not thinking about non-duality, they were actually one with what they were doing. And in the truth, all traditions, the Muslim people, they do the dirk, and in India, we do yoga, whatever. The Taoists, they do some kind of yoga too. The Jewish, they have this kind of movement, and all traditions include the body. So it's only when we look only at the text of the tradition that it seems that it was very intellectual, but it's not always the case. Like Ravana Maharshi never talked much about the body, but that was sort of an exceptional thing, even if it was advertising pranayama for some people. But I will say this power of being was enough to subdue the mind of people around him, and so they didn't need to do gymnastic. But I think in most teaching and in Jean's teaching, the body work was not essential, and not for everybody. If you're too old, there's no need to pretend to be a yogi. But it was part of it was not spiritual, and actually Jean never used the word yoga, he used the word body work. Because he didn't want the word yoga, because already at the time of Jean, yoga was used in a very arrivist point of view. People were doing yoga to become this, to become that, to be... so Jean didn't like this arrivist attitude, so he never used yoga, he used the word body work.
Sorry, what was the word you used? Relevist? I didn't understand.
Body work.
Yeah, sorry, you used a word like relevist or something. I didn't understand. You said...
No, use the word to not to be in the arrivist dimension of modern yoga.
Sorry, that's the word I didn't get.
Arrivist, I mean...
arrivist.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes,
that's okay.
The idea of getting something.
I see. Right.
So it was very important for him that when we do body work, we do it for the sake of it, for the beauty of it, not because it will convey any benefits. It's just an art of being, like a musician play music, not because it will give him anything, but he's a musician, a dancer dance, and we do body work because that's what we do. But it doesn't convey anything special. It is just celebrating oneness in one way, as a poet can celebrating with words, and an architect with volume. So he didn't like the fantasy of spiritual achievement in body work. But it was part of his, but not for everybody. Some people went to him, and they were open enough to directly, I would say, receive the teaching without going to the body work. But most of us, we are not very bright, we are not very sensitive. So for us, body work was a big part of, not the teaching, but a big part of open up for the teaching. Body work makes you aware of your tension, your desire, your fear, and this awareness helps you to receive actually the teaching when the body is totally tense and when the mind is in obsession and in arrivism and in looking for something and defending, and it's very difficult to listen to a teaching. So the body work helps you cool down this kind of mechanism and make you bring you simply to a state of very simple listening, in which you can receive a teaching with no, in an effortless way. So body work for us is just a way to be more open, to be more receptive.
Yeah, thank you. And you mentioned listening, and I actually had a question about listening, because one of the things I loved in reading the book, Let the Moon Be Free, and some of your other teachings, is the way that you illuminate listening as this important spiritual practice in and of itself. And do you think there's something inherent in our ability to listen that, because we're such a visual species and we're often using visual metaphors, and so much of our life, especially with media, is fixated on the visual. Do you think there's something in the auditory and the listening that allows us to understand this teaching?
The way we use listening is not actually linked to the hearing.
Right.
Listening is just abiding to the fact. Like a child, you put a 2-year-old child in a room, and he's listening to the sound, but to what he sees, to the smell, and to the cold, and to the... So listening is not something we do. Listening is what we are. When you go out in the street, if it's cold or warm, you make an effort to close your jacket, to remove your jacket. Listening is a very core of life. So it doesn't need anything. But it is true that we are so much cut generally from that listening, because we are caught in thinking. And like when you see people walking in the street, you can see that nobody is looking, nobody is listening. People are thinking. I don't mean even the new decadent one who are looking at the phone, but even before the absurd creation of the phone, people in the street, you could see some they walk, they laugh, some they walk, they cry, some they walk, they think. They're not present. They if somebody falls, they will not see. They're not present. They're in thinking. So when we realize that we have been educated in a certain way to be like that, to be obsessed with our own thoughts, body work sometimes is a very pedagogical tool to come back to a simple fact of when I move my arm, I feel the resistance of the hair. When I bring back my arm, I feel the resistance, and I feel the textile which is on my chest, which is something very basic, which is like when you walk on the sand on the beach, you make no effort to feel it's hot. And then when you walk in the snow with a bare foot, you make no effort to feel it's cold. It's very natural. But our society, our education, and so on made that this simple fact of feeling has been reduced for many people. And I'm not talking even about the next generation who spend his whole life looking on the computer, who don't feel the warm because they are air conditioned, who don't feel the warm because they are air conditioned, who don't want to feel anything. They don't want to have a pain, they take a painkiller. So we're creating a society where nobody wants to feel anything. And the result will not be surprising. But the art of life is feeling everything. One day, Jean was always accenting, he said, when you're cold, just wait a second, then you put your coat. But just feel it. When you're warm, wait a second to remove your coat, feel it. When you feel to drink, when you're thirsty, just wait a second, feel the thirst. When you want, and it's very important, not that we have to wait, but just to encounter the feeling. But in our society, immediately, I have a pain, what I want to use the pain, I take a pill, or I'm cold, I put the thing on, and I'm warm, and I put the fan on, and it's going a way of life for me. We live in feeling. It's important to be cold, it's important to be warm, it's important to have thirst, it's important to have a lack of food sometimes, it's important to be tired, it's important to... Yes, if it's too much, why not using modern tools, but not immediately. First, we must encounter the simple fate of, before deciding, what should I do? Why not feeling it? Just like somebody caress your hand, and you, before saying it's nice, it's not nice, and you can shut up and just feel it without creating a story about it. So it was a big part of Jean's teaching too.
Yeah, beautiful. That's, I think, much needed advice in this day and age. I mean, our smartphones, they're designed basically so we don't feel anything. So any moment of boredom can be filled instantly with some new information.
It's terrible. I'm traveling a lot, and yesterday I was in Spain, and in the airport, nobody look. And people are just looking at their phone. They want information.
Yeah.
They don't look the beauty of somebody, the ugliness of somebody, the strength of somebody, the lightness of somebody, the weakness. They don't look. They don't smell. They don't hear. There's stupid music constantly, like in the supermarket and so on. And people are sense are totally abused. So no silence.
Yeah.
No silence. It's terrible. Why? Oh, they must put some music. Let's put some music.
Yeah. Do you know the music for airports by Brian Eno? Have you ever heard that piece of music?
No.
So Brian Eno, he's like an ambient music producer. He made this piece of music in the 70s, I think, or 80s. And he was in the Cologne airport, and he said, yeah, it was the scene you're describing. Everyone, there's this really bad music playing and everyone's distracted. And he said, the airport should be like a cathedral, because we're in this, going on this, this tube of metal that's going to fly through the air. It could be the end of our lives. So he created this really majestic, very simple piano and vocal piece that should be played in the airport. And he said also that the Cologne airport he was in already kind of looked like a cathedral. It had these big glass windows, but everything else on the ground, like the music and the stores and the shops, was very kind of non-transcendent. So yeah, it's a nice piece of music to listen to. I wanted to ask, since we are coming back to Science and Nonduality for this podcast, about the Let the Moon Be Free, the book that Jean-Luc Melner, a very important behind-the-scenes person who kind of keeps Science and Nonduality running in many ways, did a beautiful translation. I read it over the weekend, and it
is a fantastic translation. When he asked me to read it, I think I just comment on one little thing, which was very mild. It's amazing, He translated. Honestly, it's an amazing translation. I think it's much better in English than in French.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, because what I love is the sort of poetic language and the metaphor that he was able to bring to life. To find sort of the English way to say that, and it was.
Which is very, very difficult. I heard my books translated into Spanish and into Italian don't have this kind of quality.
Awesome. So we'll have links to that book in the show notes. It's available through Science and Nonduality. So you mentioned you're traveling now. Are you giving talks and dialogues?
Yes, but I never travel for pleasure. Pleasure, I stay sitting on my bed. But I do, I was in Spain yesterday in the Basque country, and before I was in Italy. And my life is to travel to convey the little I've felt of Jean's teaching. So, unfortunately, very few of us are still on the market because Jean is dead, like maybe, 25 years ago, something like that. And so I was one of the young ones. So but most of the serious students of Jean are gone for a long time. When I met Jean, there were some people who fought the First World War. Students of Jean, they were in their 80s. But so all these people, of course, are gone. So few of us remained around. So I think it's important to convey the little we have understood of him.
Right. Cool. Well, thank you, Éric, for this chance to speak together, and I hope it was nice for you. And thank you for listening to The Sounds of Sand. We invite you to explore more of our talks, dialogues, videos, articles, events, and offerings through our website, scienceandnonduality.com. If you've enjoyed this conversation, please consider becoming a member to access our massive library of SAND content, available exclusively to SAND members. And we would love it if you could leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Google, and Spotify, and share this episode with your family, friends, and all sentient beings. Be well.